And we are back. Episode 44 of the Lyrical Ones podcast. I am grateful and thankful to be here. My name is Sineo. And as per usual, Alfluent, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. It is April 14th, 2021, and it's another Wednesday. We are broadcasting again live, and there's a lot going on in the world. Before we get into that, let me know how you living.
Um, I am living with much much thankfulness, much insightfulness, much reflectiveness. Um, Not in spite of, but because I just released a song, released today.
I was
It's
going to
called
ask about
Shine
that. You've
On.
been you've been dropping some things lately.
Yes, I have been doing my best to remain consistent in my release of music, of new music, of quality music for people to listen to and enjoy. A lot of it is what I like to call head heavy content of varying degrees. This one is much more it has much more of a bounce to it, much more of a this is like to me what I consider one of those driving songs, like a song you drive to when when you on the freeway, being safe. But you feeling yourself and you driving. This is one of those songs for that. But it's it's a song about just what the outcome of grinding is, right? Like grinding, people always associate with the hustle, but in the double speak, the duality of it, right? We usually grind something to resurface, right? To refine, to smooth out, to shine. And Shine On is the name of the song. So it's like that theme of what is it that I need to do so I can allow myself to shine. And it's for everyone. Everyone deserves to shine, to have their moment in the sun, if you will. And that's what this song is about. Hence, the artwork is bright yellow. So yeah,
I can
I'm
dig it.
feeling good.
I can dig that. You know, you got a feature on there, yeah.
So it's gonna be the next 9 songs I release every 2 weeks is produced by this producer, incredible producer out of LA. His name is Tulip. And
Nice.
so the reason why the artist name is my name plus the producer is because I believe in the producer as just as present through the process of the creation of the song, given that they are literally everything that I'm speaking to or speaking over or
True.
integrating my words. So, I'm a music producer first and foremost. Shout out to Timbaland for inspiring me to even think I could do it. But, at the age of 9, watching CMC music and seeing Aaliyah 1 in a million, I was like, how did they put crickets in this dope song? I need to be that. Who makes the crickets go there? So I learned that, like, okay, this is a music producer, and that's what got me into music, was producing music. I always wanted to do it. And so when I work with producers, I'm always gonna uplift and highlight that they were a part of this process. And so Tulip is that producer. We got more tracks to come. This is one of 9 for, the next every 2 weeks, you'll see another song posted from me and a different subject matter. So, right now it's Shine On. Next one, I'm gonna let y'all know. But they'll be out every 2 Wednesdays. So that's what's going on right now.
Nice. I appreciate, the heads up and also the flashback to, Aaliyah's 1 in a million. Growing up, listening to a lot of music, a lot of great producers over the years. I was always a fan of uh, the storytelling aspect of the music. That the musically the instruments would start you somewhere and then have you end up somewhere else. And as I got into lyrics, and how storytellers would do the same thing or paint this picture, and bring you into their world, into their day, into their life experience, um, I think I saw how they could complement a great production on a track, with a great story. Because growing up, I listened to like Earth, Wind and Fire, um, or the Drifters, or Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes, or Smokey Robinson, um, even Ronald Isley and the Isley Brothers, and Ernie Ronald and Ernie Isley. Shout out to the Isley Brothers, and two producers, Timbaland and Swiss Beats, who started this versus TV thing. Um, it's platform for them, for artists to kind of showcase their work and celebrate their work. Kind of give opportunity to people to give their flowers to their favorite artists, while they're still here. But as I listen to a lot of great music with a lot of originality, a lot of original productions and songs in the 60s and 70s, when I heard a song like The Message by Grandmaster Flash, it was like, oh, I know the streets in my neighborhood that look like what he's talking about. I know the corners and the blocks in my neighborhood and in my city that look and sound like what he's talking about. When they showcase a skit where folks get into an argument, I seen it happen outside in my youth. Like I know, what that looks like. Even like NWA would, take the same track, right? The same production. Ice Cube take the same production and put together, Check Yourself, and sample, sample a track, and then I see it used in a different way. Then I see Puff and Mace take the same track, right, musically, and then change the tempo a little bit, and also again paint a picture. And if production wise, because the production tells a story, the artists are able to then layer, accompany it with another story. And a lot of times people think of the production as accompanying the lyrics, and sometimes I think it's the other way around, um, where it's the lyrics that are accompanying the story that's being told in the production.
Nah, I agree wholeheartedly. There's a lot of conversation right now around creatives and like ownership, and that extends to a multitude of realms where it's like you might work for a company or agency, and you might have an idea, and if you're not aware of kind of the messaging behind where what space you hold, like what do you bring to the table, and then who owns the ideas you come up with. Like you might make a curriculum, you might be a teacher, right? And the canvas is kind of what the school offers around you, and then how do you fill in those gaps. And you might have a cutting edge way of coming at subject matter, and how you approach that could be a point of contention for someone to say, well, we own that, that's ours, right? So there's a
True,
lot of
true,
layers,
true, true.
and right now, I agree, like as a producer, what I consider myself a producer first, I think of the producers that I grew up on that like really had me like, we were just before we were in the pre-show, we were kind of going over some Dr. Dre classics, and it was that idea of this producer who made this album that in a lot of people's eyes is considered a classic front to back, where there's a story being told on two levels, right? The production's telling the story, and then every lyricist or artist that is performing over those kind of instrumentation, right? The backdrop of the scene, it's like that, what is being given, what's being delivered through the production. And so, I think there's a lot to say about just, one ownership, right? Because people be like, man, producers they just make the beat, but it's like, yo, that beat could make or break your whole song, right? It ain't like you just getting up there giving people acapellas, and there ain't nothing wrong with that. Ain't nothing wrong with acapellas. Ain't nothing wrong with spoken word, but those are different aspects, right? People don't remember Michael Jackson for his solo vocal achievements, right? It's what did he create that gave you this space of like bewilderment, right? Prince was a multi instrumentalist, right? There's a lot of things to take into account when we look at music and producers. For me, I'm an advocate for those that need advocacy. So always for the producers.
Oh yeah, for sure. And and a lot of artists like yourself, contribute during the production process, and you find things that work. Speaking of great producers, and speaking of Swiss Beats, he lost a friend and a brother, Earl Simmons, Darkman X, okay, DMX, the dog, big dog, um, and lost him to death in the past week, and you know we may have lost him, physically, but so much of his contribution and his energy, um, still carries on for folks. And it's like, I think what's interesting about DMX and is his passion and his vulnerability, um, and his genuineness allowed us to know everything that was troubling him, um, in a way that the tabloids couldn't tell us what he hadn't already told us. Um, there was no news outlet or media outlet that was gonna trump him in getting a story out. He had already told us who he was and what he was struggling with and what he had been struggling with, um, through his music. And it's interesting. It reminds me of like the Deadpool rap, um, where Deadpool would often break the fourth wall as a character, and talk to the audience. And I feel like a lot of times DMX was talking to everyone listening, talking to himself, talking to his family, at times talking to his grandmother who had passed, who he had missed, um, as well as talking to his creator, who he felt was in control of his life and would provide comfort. Um, and as he was someone who believed in God, he was he was not paralyzed, um, by a lack of accomplishment. So he would be in a place of progress and working on something, but he didn't hide where he was struggling. He didn't hide what he was working on. He didn't hide where he felt he needed to grow. Um, Instead, he was honest to some degree about where he would like to grow into, and at the same time inviting his audience to empathize and sympathize sometimes, but more so see and hear themselves in the music. And um, if he was having a great day, you could listen to him. If he was having a horrible day, you could listen to him. If you was upset with your family or your significant other, or you was upset with yourself, you could listen to him. If you was disappointed in yourself, you could listen to him. If you felt humbled, if you felt confident, if you was feeling yourself, if you were angry, if you were mad, if you were upset, if you was frustrated, he had music for all of that. If you was a hater, he had music for you. If you hated the haters, he had music for you. If you was loving the haters, he had music for you. And is is really interesting that as he would share in his struggles, he was also still enabling a toxic masculinity, that was causing harm to people in the streets, in his audience, um, for women and for for queer listeners who, whether they, even if they didn't listen to his music, it was hard to escape popular rap at the height of his career. And so when you had anthems that uh, denigrated folks and insulted folks, it was tough to like not hear those lyrics everywhere. Um, and I can only imagine how tough it may have been for folks who to hear those lyrics recited out in public and not internalize those things. Um, and so, like it wasn't always causing me harm, but causing harm to classmates or schoolmates, um, family members, and cousins. Um, as people internalize those lyrics and then use those lyrics to harm people, use those lyrics to enable to hold on to and reiterate a mindset or a perspective of people um, that kind of pressed people down. And like to your point, people remember Michael Jackson's body of work in a track. They remember the whole thing, not just the lyrics or not just his voice, but also the music and the dance steps and the visual video presentation, the visuals. Whether they saw him live or they saw the crowd, or they saw Mike popping and locking or moonwalking. They remember everything that he was, and similarly with DMX, right? Like without Swiss Beats production, we don't know if X is sounding the same way. Matter of fact, X did a lot of stuff a cappella and sounded great, and had a great delivery and cadence and energy and conviction, to his voice. But we still remember the horns come on, and then you hear the miss go woo, and everybody knows the words after that. And it was sometimes it was like a call and response. It was like commands he was giving to folks, right? But he was talking about himself. Y'all gonna make me lose my mind. Y'all gonna make me go all out. Um, and I think that even though it's presented in a catchy beat, as a narrative, to a struggle. Um, and people may have used it to amp up their sports teams or amp up they work day, or get themselves ready to go out and party. But it's at the end of it, it's like it's a narrative for being on the edge.
Oh, that's real. I mean, there's a lot of complexities that are created by people who are vulnerable, who put themselves out there, who give themselves to the world in a way that is, uh, you know, because you got to remember at the same time, people are the outcome of their environments. They're the reflection, the mirror of what they come from, and it's so many layers and complexities in who DMX is to people and was for the music world, and the energy that he brought, right? Like, there isn't, it's hard to draw. Like, you can always say, oh, this person reminds me of this person, those
There will
lines.
never be another. You right. It will never be another DMX.
It's just so, he's such an anomaly, but also like exact, like was so needed for the time that he was here and what he did for people and what he represented and how he showed up. Because yeah, there was the level of harm, but it was also that level of acknowledgement of like his willingness to admit his faults and his flaws, and how he's not trying to live up to this grandiose idea of I'm better than you, right? If anything, I'm the worst of what the world has to offer, and I want you to feel that. I want you to know that. I want you to be
Right.
afraid of me, right? 1, 2 X is coming for you. He's treating himself like the boogeyman. And the thing that I appreciated most was that he never showed up as somebody who was flamboyant. He never showed up as somebody who was trying to stunt on people. Like if it was a stunt, it was the biker crew that did stunts in the video. But he wasn't like iced out head to toe, dressed in the finest clothes. Like he was,
Now his
you
flex
know,
was that he was authentic.
he was wearing a tank top, baggy jeans, and some like Tims. Like that was his. That was
Yeah.
like that was it. You see what you got, and that's he was consistent with that. He never, he wore the same. I remember we like when he was popping 99, 98. We went to like Safeway because they had in the dog where the dog aisle was. They had the chains, and we would buy the chains and wear the chains
Right.
because DMX wore a dog chain. Like he wore a real like dog choker chain, and we were all like, "Oh, we could get one of those, right?" And it was
Right.
like remembering that and seeing that, whereas every other rapper it was like, oh, you got to save some money for some teeth, you got to save some money for a chain, right? And if you even then you know it's fake if you got it from the swap meet because you ain't, you know what I'm saying, you got it from a flea market, you ain't really, that ain't real, but you try. And DMX was like the entry, the level of entry was so low that it was like your DMX starter kit was a lot different than any other record label.
It was
So
what you already had at home.
exactly, right? Oh, I got this. I'm taking my dog's collar today. But that's what I'm saying is like he was so quick to own up to it that he didn't shy away from it. And he was super transparent. It wasn't just vulnerable. It was like that. It was everything was available to you. It wasn't like he was gonna hide, and,
Right.
and he was processing his pain as he was living it. And those prayers, like, I, it's crazy. And this is where it's like, how could you say this? But I don't believe I ever went to a concert and heard DMX pray. But every time I've seen one of his prayers, I felt like I was there. Right? I know for a fact who I've been to their shows and who I haven't been to their shows. And DMX is the only one where I get confused because of how it's so breathtaking, how it just captivates you. Because I know for sure I've seen the Hard Knock Life Tour movie, and DMX is always the one that stands out to me, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
And when he has those prayers and he breaks down and he cries, it's like you're in the moment with him, right? You're transported to wherever he is, and that's the thing that is always hard for me to discern between, did I experience that firsthand or did I experience that watching on the screen? And
Right.
he's the only one that's ever been able to do that for me. So, RIP DMX, you will be missed. You're left leaving behind children and so many different people who love and care about you, and your impact has definitely been felt, and there's much to learn from our constant discovery of his life and exploration of the experiences he gave us all.
For sure. I think without DMX, um, there's a lot of cultures that don't, a lot of culture that doesn't exist um, when it comes to the communities that were created, just in bike life. Um,
Man, bike life,
that
like,
that opened up a door for peoples of color that there were small communities, and then he's funny. He's like Allen Iverson, brought a lot of people, but DMX brought a lot of people together as well, and was like polarizing and trailblazing um, in a very similar way. And yeah, I think DMX's his flex was always that I am more real than you are. Like I am tangible. I am authentic, right? Like you said, not just vulnerable. Um, but like right here, in your face, and like you said, like I'm the worst, but I'm also, fully present, in my growth as I go forward. Like he was never like going, I'm going backwards. Like and it's interesting because he when he talked about his struggles, it wasn't from a place of defeat. Um, when he talked about his struggles, it was from a place of hope. Like I can get through this.
Yep.
Um, and I think that is something that touched people's hearts. And I think, when you look at the world today as, you know, so much is repetitive and reminiscent, and so many problems are still, unsolved and unresolved. Some of the issues are still there. We still need voices to speak of hope. We still need voices to, not revel in the in the material things. We still need folks, artists, creators, to focus on the heart of the matter, um, the community, the brokenness, the injustice, and see that for what it is, and try to move forward. Yeah, and then I never feel like DMX was rapping at me. I feel like he was rapping with me, and he was inviting me to rap along. Um, that was an interesting thing about X, is that, yeah, it always felt like, no matter what song it was, and not even like all his songs, like some of my favorite songs, you know, he was talking to his own struggle, or talking to himself, or talking to his neighbor. Um, but I feel like he was speaking from my voice. He was speaking from like my side. When I hear stop being greedy, I feel like he's talking for me, to say, ribs is touching, don't make me wait. Mess around and I'ma bite you and snatch the plate. Like, I know a hunger that feels that way. Um, and I know, like, people who are left out and looked over and marginalized who feel that way. And so, like, when we talk about like advocacy, um, and folks who need a voice, there are folks who have a voice already, and people are not necessarily listening. And and some people are screaming like DMX, and people are still not listening. Right? Maybe because they ain't got Swiss Beats production, maybe people are not hearing their screams, but there are women and children, there's and trans peoples, and migrants and immigrants and displaced people who are screaming, and we need to listen better, right? Like, women don't need to be louder, men need to listen better. Right? Homeless people don't need to be louder, right? The programs are there. Why are we not looking at programs that already exist? And we shouldn't have to wait for the trauma, or, right, 300,000 people to die from coronavirus, for there to be, a solution, right? We shouldn't have to wait for, like, a man shouldn't have to wait for him to have a daughter, for him to see women as human, as people, as equals. Um, right? Shouldn't have to be some kind of trauma that binds us together to say, oh, they need backup. Um, and when I look at communities, and I see people like, oh, patrolling neighborhoods to stay, right, to help people stay safe as a deterrent, but also, like, what makes a deterrent is community, right? Community also makes a deterrent. Um, the easy thing to do is reject somebody, right? Cancel culture is easy, right? Cancel culture is just a microcosm or just like a social representation of what the prison system is, right? Just discard somebody altogether, let them be in Twitter jail, right? Or whatever. There's no rehabilitation happening. They don't get better at being in the community. And in the community they come back to, them folks is not even great at welcoming nobody into community in the first place. So somebody gets kicked out of the community or discarded, and they go away for a little bit, and people come back and forget about whatever they done. Like maybe the general public, treats them like a normal person, and there's individuals who remember and they say, "Oh, I forgive, but I won't forget." But did you really forgive anything? Like, or like, were you ever trying to heal this situation? Like, conversation needs to happen, not just kicking somebody out altogether. That don't fix nothing, right? Then we see that with the prison system all the time. Is people don't come back rehabilitated. They're not in prison getting better at being in the community. they not they not in prison learning rules. They learn it. They in survival mode, literally practicing like fight or flight on a regular basis most of the time in prison. Not not forgiveness, not communication, not active listening, not humility. That's not what's being practiced. As the United States government offers cancel culture to someone who's got a marijuana possession charge and is on a third strike, is in prison serving 3 to 5 years or more, and they're not learning how to not smoke weed. they they're stressing about other stuff and wishing they were smoking weed instead of like having no outlet at all, and then mad that everybody's smoking weed now while they in prison for it. Like it's wild. But yeah, advocacy, man. We need folks to be screaming, but we also need folks to be listening to the whispers, and some of the screams are right there in front of us.
Yeah, I mean, you highlighting a lot of different things. There's, as always, there's so many layered and intertwined
It's
that we're
complex,
all
man. It's complex.
it's it's all complex, and we get into so much because two things. When you said that about the idea of prison and discipline, my response to it was because I've said this, but now it's changed, right? And so the change is now I went from saying it was discipline that they were trying, like rehabilitation, right? Like prisons and rehabilitation. When we know that, the 13th Amendment of the United States states that slavery still exists,
Come
right?
work for us.
You just gonna work. You get in trouble. Now what we gonna do is the punishment isn't about your rehabilitation to come back into society, as much it is further institutionalizing your mind, right? And the way we do that is we consistently punish you for not knowing how to healthily process your own trauma. Now, you might not have been the reason why you have your trauma, but that's usually what's happening is that you're committing yourself to actions out of traumatic experience, out of adversity, right? Whether it's given to you by your birthright, right? You didn't ask for it, it's just given to you, or you fell into it due to just various circumstances. But that's what it is. We're consistently punishing you because when I talk about discipline with my family, I'm talking about my discipline is me being healthy, right? Me taking care of myself, my wellness, so I can be consistent at life, right? So I can consistently practice what I need to do every day, right? That's to me discipline, right? They all intertwine and they feed. But when I punish someone, I'm now being punitive based off of the actions. And I don't want to do that. I stay away from that. I'm not going to sit here and say I'm disciplining you. No, I'm gonna help you develop the discipline you need so you can do what you need to do, right? What you
Right.
need so you can do what you need to do. Now they use those words to you confuse us to associate that term disciplinary actions with punitive punishment. They're not the same. They're not the same because if you had like you said, you come back into a community that has nothing there, no structure, no discipline, nothing formed to support you, right? It's like, oh, we're going to take you out of the environment that is causing these actions, right? Because it's like if you leave a baby in the woods, the baby's in the woods, right? But you put a baby in different circumstances, situations, they're going to respond and learn based off of where they are. And so let's take you out of the environment that is causing you obvious harm, right? And then we're going to put you right back without any change to the environment, right? It's the same environment you was in, right? We're not equipping you with, we are we giving you money? Are we giving you money to say, all right, this money's for you to get a head start on what you didn't have? No, we're not doing that. We you coming out either with debt or missing out on time that you can't get back. You at a deficit. And now the expectation is, yeah, live life. Pull yourself up by the bootstraps. When the people pull themselves up by the bootstraps, ignore who gave them the boots, right? Like they didn't make the boots themselves. Like this is the reality of the country we live in. And it's so hard for people to like wrap their mind around it because that feeds into if you just so happen to be driving, you get pulled over and you wearing a military uniform and they just don't like they don't like the fact that you want to use your rights because of the way your color your skin is.
Pepper spray.
They don't like you got an air freshener hanging from your window, right? You got it in the mirror right in the front, then you're now no longer alive to have a conversation about it, right? These are the environments that we live in, and we talk about why is there so much mistrust in the communities because that same those same events, right? When we say trust the science, right? When people say that term, they don't realize how you are also ignoring the science that we're living in because that's science right there. People getting murdered, being killed by the hands of individuals, and then we look back at our past and we're like, oh, well, on this podcast we brought up how they were removing the organs of women, sexual organs of women at the border, right? Held in captivity, right? They're no longer able to have children because the people who are backed by scientific means and standards are destroying these women's future, right? That's the same that's the same environment where we can point to smallpox, we can point to the testing of black subjects to COINTELPRO, right? We're talking about we're supposed to have faith in things and we don't have no real stake in it. And what I'm saying is I'm saying this. If my relationship to science was different from the beginning, then I wouldn't have it wouldn't be a matter of trust. I'd speak the same language.
Mm.
I would have access to make my own hypotheses, test out my
Right.
theories, and come to my own conclusions. But I now have to take the same faces who look like the same people who've acted in the name of science in the past by saying, I'm not a full human, right? Which you originally put in your institution and you lived up to it, right? By saying we're more like animals. You parade us around in zoos, right? And then I have to live in the same environment where it's like, oh, how did like I look at the news and they're like, how did white supremacists integrate into the military? They've been there. They like this is the sickening part of the country, right, that we live in. They pose the question, how did the white supremacists infiltrate the military? The white supremacists didn't infiltrate the military. They've been there. They felt emboldened, emblazoned
They
because
were
of
recruited.
leadership. Yeah,
They were
they didn't
recruited.
they didn't even have to be recruited because they was already there, right? Like we were just chilling, but now we have a call to action from leadership, right? Like the president, right? They're the what is it? The head of chief. What is it? The what do
Chief,
they always
the,
the
the
head
chief is the
I
chief
want
of
to say
staff.
chief of staff. Yeah, right.
Oh
And that
no,
and
no,
that's
you talking about the president, the commander in chief.
commander in chief. There we go, commander in chief. Right. So when you think of militaristic protocol, right, and you think of call to action, the commander in chief made the former commander in chief, right, because it was transitioning, right. The commander in chief made a call to action. He alerted his own armed forces to enact this movement, right? Whether it was a legit action, that's what happened. So don't give me this like this falsehood of like, well, where did they come from? If me as a person of color been have I've communicated in a multitude of ways, yo, it's white supremacists, it's racist, it's all these people who are against me. And then when they show themselves, you're surprised. I ain't trusting nothing you have to say about anything. Which then brings me to, oh, one and done. Get you a shot and get on your way. Now, to me, I'm always thinking of how do I reduce the harm, right? So I'm like, what's going to have the least harmful impact, right? And so, what do we have to do? We have to struggle. We have to go through a strenuous time of like socially distancing. It's hard on us all. It's a shared collective struggle we have, but it's to ensure our livelihood and our survival. So I don't have any research or information, and we're rushing to get back to a place of normalcy that I'm here. This is late and breaking news brought to you by Sineo from Lyrical Ones. We're never going back to what was. It's over. I'm sorry. There's no
Nah,
there's
we
no
ain't going
rush
back.
to we ain't going back. There's just that's the way it is, right? Like that's like saying to the indigenous people who were like, "Oh yeah, there'll be a day. They are working to kill you every day. That's the day, right? There will be a day." No, let's look at the day we have in front of us. We need to work on surviving
Right.
to
They'll be done
thrive.
when you dead.
Exactly, right? That is the campaign trail, right? Talk about the trail of tears. The campaign trail is your tears, right? So they can slip and slide through. And so in this, where like I remember vividly looking at the news of a predominantly black church in San Francisco and them using this as a way to draw awareness and gain faith and trust in the black community to come and get this one and done Johnson and Johnson shot. And now here we are, and they're like, we have to pause because there's been one death, right? One person's been harmed, not to mention the other people who have been harmed, because there's more than one, right? So to me, it's like, oh, could we have taken proper steps and measures to take our time to get here? No, no, no. The outcry and the outpour from the public, the same public who says, how did white supremacists get into the military? The same public who's like, oh, well, the young man obviously was dressed a certain way because when he had the air freshener, or he shouldn't have been so smart. He shouldn't have been a smart guy. Like, yeah, just because he's in the military don't mean that he can't respect authority. No, 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 no. Let's rewind the tape. At every point of those intervals, you are the same people. We all live on the same spectrum. We all get treated differently on this spectrum. It's not binary, it's not black and white. It's only black and white when those in power have the ability to make us feel like it's black and white. But
Hmm.
we live on a spectrum, right? And I can understand that. But I hope that there's some grace and some space for people to understand my hesitations to just want to rush to things when all we've ever done is rush into something and we end up being the one who got. I come from a family where I've lost a lot of family members. And when I look at the data and I look at the scientific outcomes of where I come from within my family, I have massive concerns around just trusting these systems because all of these systems are interconnected and intertwined. And whether it's acknowledged directly, openly, passively, indirectly, the same outcome is across the board. You want my death, you want my destruction. I don't have faith in any part of anything you say, right? I'm holding on to a glimmer of hope because I'm alive. But every time I talk to somebody and we say we share this experience of life and death under these different circumstances, right? Oh, my grandmama got diabetes. Oh, my auntie got cancer. Oh, man, they pulled a gun out on me. Oh, man, I can't walk the street safe. Oh, man, I don't have resources, access to, I don't come from. All of this connects, right? Nothing lives in isolation. You
No.
cannot segment and divide any of this because as my whole experience being a black and brown man in this country has been nothing but a combination of events that have constantly made me fear for my life. And I'm no rush to jump to normalcy because what's been normal has been harmful. And until we push into something that's going to be innovative or change, and I don't mean that incremental, little, what do they call it? We're gonna give you a merit increase, right? Let's give you a merit increase. How good did you do this year? based off of the system that I had no involvement in developing. I just had to accept it, give it to me, and now I got to go along with it. Nah, I'm not the one. Acknowledge what's the harm. Don't place me in no anti-vaxxer category. I'm not talking about that. If there's a vaccine that needs to be taken, I'll take it. But then don't turn around and say we're gonna halt on this third option. And then I'm
Mm-hmm.
just supposed to be like, oh, so my concern about wanting to wait and take my time that I've been trying to, I know I'm in the minority. No, no kidding. Look at my skin color. But the minority of the minority, right? Because my family, yes, I've lost so many, and that was in the hands of doctors who I was supposed to trust their science, right?
Exactly.
When the same people who I've had to go through my own advocacy for my health time and time again, in spite of their scientific minds, just because you a scientist does not make you smart. Okay. I don't like, let's get that out the way. You might have the scientific backing of a certification, but trust me when I say you are not the Michael Jordan of your field. You are not the top tier, top three in your league, right? You are looking for a check. Your motivation is not my health. Your motivation is to pay off your car. Your motivation is to pay off your house. Your motivation is not to see me thrive, right? That's not your motivation. Your motivation, right? I'm not saying everyone. I'm saying there's a good chunk of y'all, and I've come across y'all, and I'm speaking from my experience. I'm not minimizing anyone else because you might have great healthcare coverage. You might have some of the most important and supportive people in your life when it comes to your health. But in my experience, I ain't had that. I've not been afforded that opportunity, right? So when you come to me and you try to dangle these carrots in front of my face of normalcy when I'm telling you, look, what was normal for y'all was this white supremacist structure that y'all have benefited from for years and I've never agreed with. And then we had 2020 happen, and I told y'all I can't go back to what we used to do. And here we are. Y'all got a vaccine that y'all had to pull the plug on because people are being harmed. We are watching a trial of, for my most ignorant way of saying, a murderer murder someone, and we're trying to convince the public that it wasn't a murder when we witnessed a murder. When a young man who is traumatized because what he was told to do was follow what society says, and society says we need to call 911 on this individual. And now he has regrets and he is living with pain that he has to process because he feels responsible to some degree for the death of a man that everyone had to watch and witness. But it ain't on him. It ain't just on him. It's on all of us. We
Right.
all share that, right? When there is the indigenous people, right? When they want to control a fire, chances are they'll start a fire and control the fire they start. They'll be able to make new land, new dirt, new earth, right? It's controlled. We don't live in that time. We live in a time where we live in fear of that fire. We're not in control of that fire, right? The fire happens, we can't breathe. Whereas our indigenous ancestors been doing it for years. And here we are now as government officials saying we need to get back to that land management that we used to do before we started eradicating and killing them with smallpox. Go figure. I'm just saying, I look at leaders and I'm like, I look at the pictures they put out and I'm like, I want to see the 360-degree angle because I don't trust the pictures no more. The pictures are not representative of a full experience, right?
Right.
They're two-dimensional, right?
Yeah.
You show me a picture of what you up to, you only showing me the picture. You ain't showing me what you up to. So, I mean, I know that was that's not to minimize the life of George Floyd. That's not to minimize the life of Dante Wright. That's not to minimize the trauma, the pain, the impact, the harm being done to the medical personnel in the military, Caron Nazario, right? I mean, there was a situation that just happened in Daly City on the 7th, right? Roger Cornelius Allen, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's no media coverage, but there's a lot of questions when you look at the reports that are being put out. Maybe it's incomplete information. But in Daly City, California, which is the neighbor city, the sister city of San Francisco, A man from San Francisco was killed by police, right? And there's all these points about, oh, well, a man of color who was sitting in a vehicle with a replica handgun. The vehicle, the reason why the officers approached the vehicle from the reports is because there was an obvious back tire that was, you know, damaged, right? And so they went to go investigate. Y'all not AAA and never have been, so I don't understand. Was
Hmm.
As far as the reports are concerned and what's being communicated is, was there any threat that was posed to anyone?
Actual
Bec-
versus perceived threat.
yeah, and I'm not speaking from, I've had that thrown at me where I was like, I remember a place I worked, they were like, is this a real threat or a perceived threat? I'm like, when you black, everything's a real threat. Ain't no perception, ain't no perceived. Do you sit in a place of authority? Do you have a bulletproof vehicle? Do you live in an area where murder happens? You no longer get to say perception, right? Yes, you white savior lady. I get it. It's easy for you to tell yourself that because you don't have to live there. You don't come from here, right? You got to leave your state and your family and come and feel great in your saviorhood to say, I'm going to help all these poor people, even though I don't know what that means. I don't know. I don't have a distinction of what the struggle looks like other than I feel for you. And now I create these boundaries and I try to dictate the boundaries to other people. So you're going to come from over there and tell me how to live over here. Right,
Right.
right. And then you go back home, right? Because it's inconvenient for you to be here. Guess what? When I go back home, ain't no perception. It's for my reality.
Right.
And so, it's just, you know, super side note, just because it was on my mind in the midst of that. Cause I was like seeing you nod your head and I was like, the first time I seen a Rough Riders vest on a motorcycle was on 3rd Street,
Hmm.
and it was multiple. That was a powerful moment for me.
Right.
But as I digress, it is a thing where, yeah, people will try to minimize the scope of your experience in your life to fit their narrative, to make them feel better about themselves, when in reality, we have to respect the differences. There's a big, huge gap between where we are and where we sit and where y'all are and where y'all point your fingers.
Yeah. I mean, every time it's like, how often, folks practicing practicing white supremacists, right, demonize people to justify their character and their behavior and their the liberties that they seem to have that most people don't share, most minorities don't share in, and they empower themselves. Uh, just a guy was recently interrupted for you know physically assaulting and screaming at someone. You know, uh, a young person of color. As they walk through their own neighborhood. He's out with you know he's out walking through his neighborhood. Not he doesn't live too far. He's from where he's standing, and a guy gets arrested for allegedly assaulting this young man. Um, telling him that he doesn't belong in the neighborhood, and folks, they put it on themselves. They take it upon themselves to police an area um, because they feel it's policing. It's not proper policing. It's really just domestic terrorism, right?
You're
Right? They
terrorizing
create
citizens of this country.
right. They try. That's exactly what they're trying to do. They're trying to create fear so that people operate through their normal lives differently, right? They don't get to enjoy or engage in the freedoms that should be allotted to them. That are their rights because of terrorists choosing to take the leeway that they get to cause harm and disrupt people, and again create fear so that people, citizens of color operate, through their daily lives, you know, altered and living with altered thinking and perception and perspective, because of fear. Um, it's just like a scarecrow, right? Scarecrow is literally there to keep crows from eating, and people are walking around. People in the majority are walking around like scarecrows, you know, just in the way, causing harm, causing people not just to starve, but also to lose their life. Um, and a lot of it is education. I feel like when we know more about each other, right? Like if that guy knows where the kid lives, where the young man lives, right? He can't really be saying. Well, I guess he could still say it and still believe that one person belongs and another person doesn't. But we gotta fix these broken ties, and this lack of community, through active listening, through better programs to bring people together, and also just white people checking on each other. Like
Yeah,
if you say
authentic.
yeah, right, exactly. You gotta those authentic relationships where you know somebody who know who someone is. They're good and they're bad, right? It's like, okay, this person talks sideways. I got friends who talk mess. I know that, right? I know that about them. Um, like it's not something I rock with all the time, but I don't judge them for who they are, and they know I don't engage, so it's not an exchange that we have, right? They may have it, amongst themselves, and they have that exchange on the regular, um, where they know something, it's not something that allows me to be, as peaceable as they are, um, you know, when they're talking that way. So, it doesn't come my way. It's not, delivered in my direction. It's not that I can't take it, or that I'm, seen as weak or a party pooper, or, not a part of the community. There are, or that I don't belong. I'm still accepted, for, the differences that we have, and, they are accepted in the same way, but we choose to be in each other's lives and then create boundaries, that work for us.
I mean, it's funny. It's funny you when you said the whole thing about I got people who talk mess because I've referenced this multiple times today, and not everybody gonna understand it. And it's easy, like so. Okay, have you seen this podcast called "I Am Athlete"? Brandon
I know,
Marshall, Channing
yeah,
Crowder,
yeah.
right? So
That's the one talking
there's a
about
recent.
mental health.
Well, this one it wasn't about mental health. This one was
Okay,
about NFL players and why is it that now they're speaking out after they said like Colin Kaepernick took a knee in 2016. What's so different between now and then? And they were trying to have this conversation around when you're in a survivalist mindset or when you're in an institutionalized mindset, you don't want to jeopardize your chances of access to what you just got, right?
right,
And Brandon Marshall gets up and he's speaking with passion, right? He's speaking with veracity, right? He's speaking in a way in a tone that it resonates with me because I'm like, I feel you. I've been in this situation where I'm with my boy, we're having a debate and I'm clapping my hands and I'm like letting them know like in every aggressive ounce of my energy how much I believe in what I'm saying based off of
right,
what I know, right?
right, right,
Now, to the outsider, it's like, oh, they getting ready to fight, right? But if you've been in those situations where you are passionately, like you have conviction, right? right?
Mhm.
If you listen to a preacher, he's saying it to a congregation, but if you were just one on one with your people, right, it's easy for the outsider to look like, oh, this is that looks threatening. He's taking a threatening stance, and it reminded me of last year. I'm operating out of pain, and I'm telling people how the harm is being impacted on me with the same type of actions, passion, and tone Brandon Marshall has, right? And I'm like, oh, that's right. A lot of y'all white people, a lot of y'all people who ain't been through the same adversity I've been, a lot of y'all are people who don't share the experiences of passion and debate that I do. So to y'all, I look like a threat, right? Y'all just see this color face and this man, and he's like, oh, he's angry and he's aiming it at me. And it's like,
Mhm.
well, yes, there is some of this for you to hold, but I'm not sitting here trying to hurt you. I'm sitting here trying to repair the damage that's been done by letting it out, by expressing myself in my most truest form. But you can't
Right.
receive it because you don't even come from where I come from, where we talk like this, right? Like you can't even, you don't even like the, like to me, I like the impassioned debates. I love the
Right.
arguments, right? Like I was on JSA, aka the debate team, because they were like, look, you talk too much in class and you got an opinion. We need to put you over here, right? You get some credit. I'm like, all right, whatever. Let me go argue. I'll argue against anybody,
Mhm.
right? And I see that. I see Brandon Marshall saying to Channing Crowder, and I've seen them time and time again. And it's like Brandon Marshall gets up, he sits back down, he's cool, he's calm, right? And I think about that imagery because in any other context with any other person, Brandon Marshall could be turned into another campaign, right? Like in any other context, can he express himself safely? Because when a person tells you you don't belong here, first thing is, what gives you the right to even think you can tell me who belongs where? But the next thing is, what happened to you in your life to make you believe that's your responsibility to say, right? What happened to you? Because something happened. You were taught, someone did something to you to make you feel some type of way,
That
to
you
put it
felt it
in
was
your head,
okay, right, to determine
to then
somebody else's
say,
rights.
you don't get to be here, right? You're running through the neighborhood and we don't like you running through the neighborhood. So now we're gonna chase you in our vehicle as you run through the neighborhood, and then you're gonna get shot. Right. And now what we're gonna do, we're gonna try and justify it. We're gonna justify taking your life, right? In the same context of someone dying from a vaccine, I can't justify it. I can't say, oh, well, I don't know them, so unfortunately it happened. No, because that could be me at any
Yeah.
given moment. That could be me. That's what I'm trying to tell you. I don't want it to be me because I've seen what death has done. I've seen the impact, and I have trauma with that. And you can tell me, accept it. I can. I already accept it. I accept it, and now it's ingrained in my head. I don't want to die. So whatever that means, I ain't finna die. You ain't finna get me to get close to death. You ain't finna give me a number and tell me point 0.5, because point 0.5 might be my name. I ain't doing it. You just ain't gonna catch me, right?
Yeah. And yeah, you're right. And like we shouldn't have to see somebody's ethnicity as the only reason that we empathize with them, right? It's like I shouldn't have to see my skin color to see myself in that person, right? I
Yeah,
shouldn't have to see my gender or my preference to see myself in their shoes. I
yeah,
shouldn't have to see my age, um, or that I wear glasses, or that I went to the same school or grew up in the same city or invest in the same company or wear the same shoes that I, empathize with somebody. I shouldn't need any of those things for me to empathize. We should be able to see that there's another person, looking to survive, looking to thrive, looking to grow, looking to, receive and give love, right? That we relate to them. But that's what happens is like people watch the news, they say, well, it wasn't me, right? I'm feeling all right, right? Oh, well, I didn't get the vaccine, or I didn't get that vaccine, or like I get to choose, or like, no, I got priority, or I already got mine. But nah, like the idea of that could be me should not be something of privilege, right? It should be something that's necessity. It shouldn't be something that that you're able to ignore or neglect or negate the idea that it could be you or one you love, or one next to you. It's like when it hits home, it should hit home because you live on Earth,
For real.
and we got folks in St. Vincent and the Grenadines in the Caribbean who live on Earth, who struggling with water, who
Access to
who
resources and
access
necessities.
access the resources. Like they got to deal with the threat of COVID. On top of that, they got regular eruptions of a volcano that's shooting hot ash and smoking rock into the sky 20,000 feet into the air, and covering the country, covering their water sources with ash, while power is going out, and there's regular eruptions that could last weeks. And it don't hit home because I've been to the Caribbean. I never been to their country. It don't hit home because I listen to their music. It hit home because they live on the same planet I live on, and it's out of their control, and they need help. And like it sucks because news outlets not talking about it. Like the news would rather talk about something that's got nothing to do with, you know, the quality of life of humanity, right? And in a cryptocurrency platform, opening up on the stock market, right? Opening up to investors on, public investing on the stock market, right? Like Coinbase got their public offering. They do a direct public offering, so without the fanfare of the IPO, but they allow initial investors to come say, we want to invest this much, and that kind of determines what the public offering will look like. So they put a valuation on it, and so you got a platform that's valued in the market, the stock market, at $100 billion, based off its initial public, its daily, its direct public offering. And like so much of the news about money and currency is about that, and what's happening with cryptocurrency and digital currencies and NFTs and blockchains. And if this eruption was happening, you know 30 miles north, 100 miles north, and affecting Puerto Rico or affecting Florida, it'd be all over the news. Where there's regular eruptions, if it was happening in Hawaii, there's regular interruptions that was influencing and impacting the people's way of life, it would be on the news, and people would be asking for help, and it would be all these people clamoring to help. And and it sucks because they just black folks that that was taken, brought to an island by Europeans, murdered, killed, tortured, and then did their best to you know work to have a some kind of liberty, and still you know British colony, right? Like it's countries that still ain't got their independence. Um, And so because they didn't got their independence, right, it's other people's responsibilities, right? Now instead of everybody's responsibilities, right? That they can take care of it. Um, and that's how people was looking at, people navigating this vaccine, right? It's like they could take care of it. Navigating this COVID, it's like, nah, they could take care of it. Like it just don't hit home for people. And that's wild. But, it's gotta hit home, if it's another living being, that you're reading about. Um, like, I folks is not celebrating, people's death. You know, like it's one thing to celebrate justice, right? And to say, oh, the justice system, finally arrested somebody, well, justice system finally convicted somebody. Like that's not justice. Prevention is justice. Like when we can stop the Ahmaud Arbery's and the Trayvon Martins and the Tamir Rices and the Sandra Blands and the Breonna Taylors and the George Floyds and the Mario Woods, like when we can stop folks from being murdered in the first place, right? That's justice, right? When we fix and heal the communities that are broken, right? That's justice. When we can provide for people and guarantee food safety and shelter, right? That's justice. When you can provide a mental health response to a person who's autistic in public and who is in need of assistance and understanding, right? Then you could provide, that then that's justice. But as long as you got these folks with the ethos of murdering people who they feel threaten them, when they practice in that ethos on a regular basis and then their training is reiterated when they first step into the academy, like we won't see justice that way. They're not catching bad guys. They killing regular people. They terrorizing regular people, regular citizens who need their protection.
I'm like, I don't believe in causing harm to no one. I don't. I really don't. I struggle with it. I'm not gonna front. I struggle with it. I struggle with it. I was watching a situation where a child and a parent were killed in a car collision due to a speeding motorist who was drinking and had passengers in their car as well. And I'm looking at who they hit and they all went away in stretchers. And I'm watching this individual stumbling drunk having a conversation with officers and they just got a bruise on the arm. And I'm like, my initial thought is anger because I have
Mm,
siblings, I have family members, I have young loved ones who ain't had a chance to live. And I always think about that. I've lost family members who haven't had the chance to fully live their full life. And this happened because someone committed themselves to an action of extreme selfishness, right? You might be going through pain. You might be going through trying to process your trauma. I don't know. I don't know. But in that moment where I see you walking and I see the family that you've impacted and changed their lives forever having to be carried away on stretchers, people say it as a meme. But as a true Metal Gear Solid 2 fan, knowing where memes come from and the importance of control and information, I'm feeding into it, right? I choose violence, right? Let me spend time with this person because of how they made me feel, this sense of remorse and loss that isn't even directly for me. It's just we on the same planet, right? When I see what happens in St. Vincent, knowing that they are part of the Commonwealth and they have gained some independence and they have their own ability to self rule, but they still have been impacted for hundreds of years from British rule, not to mention European rule. Yet in this time of trauma and need, I mean, what does the response look like of the world to come to their aid? It's initially I choose violence,
Yeah.
right? I'm learning how to not say that. I'm learning how not to jump at that. I'm learning how not to act out in that. But I cannot front when I hear about how Haiti had fought for their independence, and then the on the ocean outside the coast, there's the French army telling them you owe us money and you are indebted to us for X amount of years, where now they live in a place that does not resemble what was started there, right? I can't help but feel some type of rage, right? When I
Yeah.
hear about the children who got to go work in the mines to go and get the nickel and copper and all of the minerals out of the earth in the different countries of Africa for these phone companies. Sometimes I just want to choose violence because it's them being on this earth along with the people who are being imprisoned in camps within China for their beliefs. I'm like, what? How can I not have this inclination of rage? How can I not feel this moment of compassion for these people who are being put in harm's way? To want to see them free, to want to see them in a state other than anything but no sense of harm, no sense of danger, no sense of loss of life or health, to thrive, to be happy, to have joy, to find love, to see smiles, to experience bliss
Yeah.
without it being through death, right? You can find something everywhere, and I do my best to say what it is that I can hold and what is it that I can do. And I try to pay attention and be aware so I remain humbled in my approach to whatever I get so that I can share, that I can enlighten, give, to inspire, to motivate. Because as long as I have a breath in my body, I'm going to try my best not to act out in violence, but to think with compassion, to move with love and peace, and to make sure I'm spreading that to everyone because it's hard. Not saying it's easy, but I'm going to do my best. And as I learn from it, I'm going to share my experience with others so they can address what needs to be addressed so we can remove ourselves from harm, where it's not just harm reduction, it's the removal of harm. It's harm removal, because that's what it really comes down to. When we're talking about these names and we're talking about these events, right? We're talking about a volcano that no one has control over, right? But
Right.
people are being impacted and they have no real necessities or resources to support them through this travesty. And we know there's a world where there's resources, right? But how those resources are distributed, how they are delivered, who's in control of those resources, right? Who are those people? And why do they have so much control, right? When you have companies that have to let go of employees, but you have CEOs that are getting bonus performance bonuses, right? You hear about it time and time again. And someone like Dan Price, who has a tech company, who's now made the minimum wage of his company $70,000 and is growing, and that people have wished for them to fail,
Right.
have openly stated their projection of hatred, because that's hate. To want to see somebody fail, that's some hate,
Hate, hate, hate, hate, hate.
right? So you projecting your hatred on a person who's trying to revolutionize how we run our economy by giving people a livable wage, a wage where they can thrive, right? He spoke to the good merits of people who've been able to enjoy life now that they make a certain amount of money. And yet here we are with the judgments and the hatred. It goes all over. Everything's connected. We are on one planet. We are a people, right? And I agree. It shouldn't be because of how you look that I feel compassionate, because it ain't about how you look.
Right.
It shouldn't be because you come from where I come from, because we all come from this place. I'm telling you, the aliens gonna come and then y'all gonna want to be on your Independence Day. Then y'all want to, oh, I need your help. Oh, you did need my help, but guess what? I'm playing for the aliens. You tripping?
Of course, it's tripping.
I'm headed to Andromeda. You out your mind. So I feel like we've had some healthy rants. Alfluent, do you have any final thoughts or final words for the people listening, and how we step away from these harmful practices, harmful ways, and step into a more healthy and a more happy, harmonious world?
I mean, I feel like there's exciting things happening when it comes to dialogue. I think maybe everybody's kind of screaming at each other still, but at least they're talking to each other again. Um, and I think the next step is kind of listening. But I think we kind of starting to move past the point where we don't want to hear each other, and I'm hopeful about that. And as we move forward, to toward community, and we change our practices of apathy, like it it begins with wanting a future that we can be proud of, um, by making those choices today, to really see each other, acknowledge each other, and be patient with each other, be compassionate, be kind, be thoughtful. And if you have a small piece of pie, there are people who got none. Just you know think of how you can pull your slices together to be able to share with somebody else, share with another group, right? It's like group what you can together and share. And it's like it's not so hard to do when you got a group of people also sharing a small piece, right? It feels overwhelming and daunting to give you a little bit of your little bit. Um, but we all find ways to dispose at times of income and revenue. And so if you have a life where it's not completely efficient, it's okay if your life is only 81% efficient. Um, but if you operate with other people who are you know a little bit less efficient and a little bit more efficient, you'll be able to teach some things, you'll be able to learn some things. And if we could keep doing that and learning from these younger people, these younger whole people who just have so many examples for us on how to look after and take care of each other. This next generation behind us does, and we can continue to learn a lot from them. And like, I'm just really grateful to be on this podcast, to have this exchange. Thank you for everyone that's listening. Y'all the real lyrical ones. Y'all the ones who have stories to tell. We appreciate you guys listening in. Like, we in the spring of 2021, and it's still wild out here. it's um, we still need creatives. We still need stories being told. We still need to see each other, see y'all, and do what you can. Now that they're taking some of these restrictions off, right? It doesn't mean that they told you all the truth. Some of this stuff is they still selling wolf tickets. So as they as we learn, we've covered wolf tickets in the past. We've covered wolf tickets on previous episodes. When they lying to you, when the government is crying wolf, right? People in authority is crying wolf. Um, it's okay if you don't believe them. It's okay if you do believe them, and it's okay if other people across from you don't believe them, right? So it's okay to have your opinion, and it's okay to govern yourself, to what you feel is best and safe for you and your family and your loved ones. But know that the growth happens with the understanding. The change happens with the understanding and the implementation. And so, as you see what's to come, you know, we learn that relationships are important. So if you go outside and hang out with your people, cultivate those relationships, make them stronger, invite other people into your groups, make small groups, make small communities, merge communities, merge worlds. Uh, Fusion is important to protecting the universe. Just make sure you practice your posture as often as possible. Practice with love.
Nah, I mean, I feel it. Everybody stay faithful. Stay faithful to yourselves. Stay faithful to something. It's good to have hope, but I feel like, hope is somewhat existential and external, and faith is something you gotta really work on. You gotta build that, right? Because for me, I feel like faith is tied to that discipline, and that's that work, that everyday work to stay faithful, right? I could be hopeful, but to stay faithful, I gotta put that work in. So
Yes, I practice.
stay faithful, stay fearless, and it's stay focused. Just to put it out there, it's all SF at the end of the day. Lyrical Ones versus everyone. It's all love,
It's all
and
love.
it's one of those things where, yeah, don't dismiss and disrespect someone because they don't believe what you believe, and they don't think how you think. Have a conversation, and there will be some discovery to be had. But it's a conversation, right? If you want to argue, I'm right here. I'm all for it. But
Hit up
don't.
Sineo. He's that argue. Go ahead,
Yeah,
get it popping.
I'll go on Instagram Live right now. You come holler at me. We could have a debate. We could do that. It's a safe space. Okay. Just don't say nothing you'll regret, because the internet is always watching and listening. And me, I ain't gonna regret nothing. I'm wearing a mask.
I ain't gonna cancel you, but some other people might.
Yeah, they might. Yeah, they gonna terminate your show. So be careful. Pull your account, because it ain't yours to have anyway. But I digress. So
But we got this one.
yeah, we got this one. So as they like to do at this time, I go for mine.
It's all love. It's all love. It's all love. One, 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 one.
See, I held my breath that whole time.